The Grand Galactic Museum stood like a crystal mountain on Nexus Prime, the largest neutral space station in known space. Ships from 100 different worlds docked at its ports every day, bringing visitors who wanted to see the wonders of the galaxy's past. Today was special. Today, Curator Velthar would reveal something that might change everything anyone thought they knew about history. Velthar was a Saurian, tall and covered in green scales that shimmed under the museum's lights. His people were proud. They had been traveling through space for over 30,000 years, longer than almost any other species. He had spent his whole life studying the past, and this moment was the greatest of his career. The artifact sat in the center of the grand hall under a black cloth. Around it, hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds waited in their seats. There were the tall avians with their feathered crests, the floating ethereals who glowed with soft blue light, the armored Krenth warriors, and many others. Guards stood at every entrance. Cameras from every major news network in the galaxy pointed at the covered object. Hana sat near the back of the hall. She was human, shorter than most of the other species present, with black hair tied back in a simple style. She wore the gray uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, with a small earth patch on her shoulder. For the past 2 years, she had worked at the museum, cataloging human artifacts and trying to convince the galaxy that her people had a history worth respecting. Most species saw humans as newcomers. Earth had only joined the galactic community 800 years ago. That seemed like a long time to Hana, but to species who measured their civilizations in tens of thousands of years, humans were like children who had just learned to walk. Velthar raised his clawed hands and the room fell silent. His voice echoed through the hall, translated instantly into hundreds of languages by the universal communication system. "Honored guests, scholars, and friends," he began. "Today we unveil a mystery that has puzzled the greatest minds in the galaxy. 3 years ago on the frontier world Kepler 442b, our excavation team discovered something impossible." He pressed a button, and holographic images appeared above the crowd. They showed a dig site, scientists carefully brushing away dirt, and finally, the object being lifted from the ground. "This artifact," Velthar continued, "has been tested by 17 different dating methods across 12 species technologies. Every single test gave us the same result. This object is 40,000 years old." Whispers spread through the crowd. 40,000 years was old, very old. It predated the earliest known spacefaring civilization by 15,000 years. "But age alone is not what makes this special," Velthar said. "The precision of its creation is extraordinary. The geometric patterns on its surface are perfect to within a nanometer. The material itself is unknown to our databases. Whoever made this possessed technology we can barely understand today." The cloth lifted slowly, rising on invisible anti-gravity fields. Light focused on the object beneath, and the crowd leaned forward to see. It was a sphere about the size of a human fist. Bands of gold, red, and brown swirled across its surface in mesmerizing patterns. The colors seemed to glow from within, creating an effect that was both beautiful and mysterious. "We believe," Velthar said with reverence in his voice, "that this may be the key to finding a precursor race, a civilization that came before all of us, that may have seeded life across the galaxy." The crowd erupted in excited chatter. Scientists stood up for better views. Cameras zoomed in. This was the kind of discovery that happened once in a generation. Hana squinted at the holographic display floating above her seat. She tilted her head, leaning left and then right, trying to see the object from different angles. Something about it bothered her. Something familiar. She stood up and walked closer, moving past seated dignitaries who gave her annoyed looks. The ethereal floating next to the aisle dimmed its glow in irritation as she passed. Hana ignored them all, her eyes locked on the sphere. No, it couldn't be. She walked faster, moving down the side of the hall toward the front. A security guard stepped forward to stop her, but Hana held up her museum identification badge. The guard hesitated, then let her pass. Velthar was still speaking, describing the theories about the artifact's creators, when Hana's voice cut through the hall. "Wait." The curator stopped mid-sentence. Every head turned to look at the human walking toward the stage. "I apologize for the interruption," Hana said, her voice steady despite hundreds of eyes on her. "But I need to see that object up close." Velthar's scales darkened, a sign of annoyance among his people. "Dr. Hana, this is highly irregular. We are in the middle of—" "Please," Hannah said, now standing at the edge of the stage. It will only take a moment. Something in her tone must have convinced him. Velthar gestured to the guards, who allowed Hannah to climb the steps to the stage. She approached the floating sphere slowly, her heart pounding. Up close, she could see every detail, the bands of color, the slight texture of the surface, the way light played across it. She had seen this before. Not this exact sphere, but ones just like it. This is Tiger's Eye, Hannah said quietly. I beg your pardon? Velthar asked. Hannah turned to face the crowd, her voice louder now. This is Tiger's Eye. It's a semi-precious stone from Earth. It's made of quartz and iron oxide. This specific pattern, these colors, they're distinctive. We use it for jewelry, decorations, and... She paused, knowing how this would sound. And children's toys. The hall erupted. Voices rose in protest, disbelief, and anger. An avian delegate squawked loudly. One of the Krenth warriors stood up, his armor clanking. Velthar's scales flushed dark red. Are you suggesting that this ancient artifact, this potential key to understanding a precursor race, is a toy? Not just any toy, Hannah said, pulling out her personal data pad. She typed quickly, searching through her files. It's a marble. I had one exactly like this when I was 7 years old. My grandmother gave it to me. She found what she was looking for and projected an image into the air. It showed a young Hannah, maybe 8 years old, holding a sphere that looked remarkably similar to the one floating on the stage. That proves nothing, Velthar said, his voice tight. Coincidental similarity at best. The dating is absolute, 40,000 years. Then humans were on Kepler 442b 40,000 years ago, Hannah said simply. The room went completely silent. Impossible, someone shouted from the crowd. Humans have only been in space for 800 years. According to official records, yes, Hannah said. But what if the records are wrong? What if there's a history we've forgotten? Velthar stared at her. Around them, the crowd had dissolved into chaos. Scientists were arguing. Diplomats were making urgent calls. News reporters were broadcasting live, their voices overlapping as they tried to describe what was happening. This is absurd, Velthar finally said. I will not allow this institution's credibility to be damaged by wild speculation. Then investigate, Hannah said, meeting his eyes. Form a committee. Test my claims. If I'm wrong, I'll resign from the museum and issue a public apology. But if I'm right... She left the sentence hanging. Velthar looked at the sphere, then at Hannah, then at the chaos spreading through his carefully planned ceremony. Finally, he nodded. Very well. We will investigate. But I warn you, Dr. Hannah, if you are wasting our time with human arrogance, there will be consequences. I understand, Hannah said, but I don't think I'm wrong. As security escorted her from the stage, Hannah looked back at the marble one more time. Somewhere on Kepler 442b, 40,000 years ago, a human child had played with that toy. They had rolled it across the ground, maybe traded it with friends, perhaps lost it in the dirt where it waited for millennia to be found. That child's people were out there somewhere in the past, living their lives, building their homes, and then vanishing from history. Hannah intended to find out what happened to them. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was far older than anyone had imagined. The committee room was cold and sterile, with white walls and a long table surrounded by chairs designed for different body types. Hannah sat in the human-sized chair, her hands folded on the table in front of her. Across from her sat Velthar, still looking annoyed. To her left was Ambassador Kreeth of the Avian Sovereignty, his blue and gold feathers ruffled. To her right sat Commander Thex of the Krenth Empire, his massive armored form barely fitting in his reinforced seat. At the head of the table, a holographic projection showed Elder Queen Us of the Ethereal Collective, glowing softly in shades of purple. 3 days had passed since the disastrous unveiling ceremony. The galaxy was still talking about it. Half the species in known space were calling Hannah either a genius or a troublemaker. Earth's government had sent her 5 messages telling her to be careful. The museum had received thousands of complaints. Let us begin, Elder Queen Us said, their voice like wind chimes. Dr. Hannah, you have made a serious claim. This committee will investigate fairly and thoroughly. Please present your evidence. Hannah activated her datapad and images appeared on the wall screen behind her. I contacted Earth's Historical Archive 3 days ago. I asked them to search for any records related to Kepler 442b. What they found was interesting. The first image showed a planet from space, green and blue and beautiful. This is Kepler 442b as it looks today. According to our official records, humans established a small colony there 150 years ago. The colony was abandoned after 40 years due to seismic activity. 150 years is not 40,000, Veltar said coldly. No, it's not, Hana agreed. So I kept looking. I requested access to older archives, ones that survived the Great Data Collapse. Ambassador Kreeth shifted in his seat. The what? The Great Data Collapse, Hana explained. In the 32nd century, Earth experienced a massive system failure. Solar flares destroyed most of our digital storage. We lost about 60% of our historical records from before that time. She pulled up another document, but some things survived. Physical books, stone engravings, isolated servers that were shielded. I found references to something called the First Expansion. The screen changed to show fragments of text in various human languages, some so old that even the translation system struggled with them. According to these fragments, humans left Earth much earlier than we officially acknowledge. Not 800 years ago. Not even 8,000 years ago. Try 45,000 years ago. The room exploded into argument. Veltar slammed his hand on the table. Preposterous. Where is your proof? I'm getting to that, Hana said calmly. I know how it sounds. I didn't believe it myself at first, so I requested permission to access Earth's classified archives. Elder Queen Us's glow brightened. And did they grant this permission? After I explained the situation to the Terran Council, yes. What I found was disturbing. Hana's expression darkened. Humanity has achieved spacefaring capability multiple times throughout our history. We rise, we expand, and then we fall. Sometimes through war, sometimes through disease, sometimes through environmental collapse. We forget, we rebuild, and we do it all over again. She pulled up a chart showing human civilization levels over time. It looked like a series of mountain peaks and valleys, rising and falling over hundreds of thousands of years. The civilization we're part of now is potentially the 4th or 5th version of advanced human society. Maybe more. We don't know because the records are incomplete. Commander Thex leaned forward, his armor creaking. You are saying that humans have destroyed themselves multiple times? Yes, Hana said quietly. We're very good at two things, surviving and making mistakes. Sometimes the mistakes are big enough that we have to start over. This is fascinating, Elder Queen said, but it does not prove that the marble is from Earth. You're right, Hana said. So I brought in an expert. She pressed a button and another holographic figure appeared at the table. It was an old human man with white hair and kind eyes. He wore simple clothes and smiled at the committee. Hello, my name is Doyun. I am a historian specializing in pre-collapse human records. Veltar crossed his arms. And what can you tell us, historian? Doyun's image gestured, and new documents appeared on the screen. I have spent 40 years recovering lost human history. What Dr. Hana told you is correct. Humanity has risen and fallen multiple times. The period she's referring to, which we call the Lost Age, lasted from approximately 45,000 years ago to 35,000 years ago. He pulled up an image of a star map. During this period, humans established colonies on at least 200 worlds that we know of. Most of these colonies failed when contact with Earth was lost. But some survived, isolated and forgotten. Kepler 442b, Ambassador Kreeth asked. Was one of them, Doyen confirmed. I found references to a colony called New Sol established there 41,000 years ago. The colony lasted approximately 300 years before failing. The records don't say why, but geological data from Kepler 442b suggests massive volcanic activity around that time. Veltar stood up, pacing behind his chair. Even if this is true, even if humans were on that planet 40,000 years ago, you still have not proven that the marble is human. Tiger's eye is found on exactly 3 planets in known space, Hana said. Earth, New Terra, and Kepler 186f. New Terra was colonized 500 years ago. Kepler 186f was never colonized. That leaves Earth. Or an unknown world, Veltar countered. Then explain this, Hana said, pulling up microscopic images of the marble's surface. These are scratch marks, barely visible. They form a pattern. It took our computer 3 days to analyze them, but it finally recognized what they were. The pattern enlarged and enhanced. Slowly, a shape became clear. It was writing, worn almost completely away by time, but still barely readable. Hangul, Korean alphabet, and 3 characters that spelled out a name. Minho. The room went silent. Someone carved their name into it, Hana said softly. Some child named Minho 40,000 years ago wanted everyone to know this marble belonged to them. Doyun's hologram nodded. Minho was a common name in Korean culture throughout most of human history. It still is, Elder Queenos's glow flickered. This is significant evidence. But we need more. We need to find other proof of human presence on Kepler 442b. I've already requested an archaeological survey, Hana said. A team is being assembled now. They'll leave for Kepler 442b within the week. I'm going with them, Velthar said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. The Saurian curator looked troubled, his scales shifting through various shades of green. If humans truly were there 40,000 years ago, I must see the evidence myself. This changes everything we know about galactic history. Ambassador Kreeth stood up. The avian sovereignty would also like to send a representative. As would the Krenth Empire, Commander Thex added. Elder Queenos considered this. Very well. This committee will travel to Kepler 442b together. We will conduct a thorough investigation. If we find proof of ancient human presence, we will report it to the Galactic Council. If we find nothing, this matter will be considered closed. Agreed? Everyone nodded. As the meeting ended and the holograms faded, Velthar approached Hana. He looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I hope you understand what you are doing, he said quietly. If you are right, you will change how every species in the galaxy views humanity. If you are wrong, you will be remembered as the human who made a fool of herself and her people. I know, Hana said, but I think there are humans out there who have been forgotten. People like Minho who lived and died thinking no one would ever remember them. They deserve to be found. Velthar nodded slowly. Then we shall find them together. 1 week later, a ship carrying the investigation committee left Nexus Prime and jumped into faster-than-light travel. Destination: Kepler 442b. Purpose: to uncover a truth that had been buried for 40,000 years. In her quarters on the ship, Hana looked at a picture of herself as a child, holding her tiger's eye marble. Her grandmother had given it to her, and her grandmother had received it from her own grandmother. How many generations had that marble been passed down? How far back did her family's connection to these stones go? Maybe, she thought, the marble in the museum wasn't so different from hers after all. Maybe they were connected by more than just coincidence. Maybe they were connected by blood, by history, by a continuous human story that stretched back further than anyone had imagined. The ship hummed around her as it crossed the vast darkness between stars, carrying her toward answers she both hoped and feared to find. Kepler 442b looked beautiful from orbit. The planet turned slowly beneath their ship, showing oceans, continents, and white clouds. Hana stood in the observation deck, watching the world where ancient humans had once lived. Somewhere down there, a child named Minho had played with a marble 40,000 years ago. The landing was smooth. Their ship touched down in a valley near the original dig site where the marble had been found. The investigation team assembled in the cargo bay. Hana and Velthar, Ambassador Kreeth, Commander Thex, and a dozen scientists and assistants from various species. Remember, Elder Queenos said through the ship's communication system, their hologram floating above the group. We are looking for definitive proof of human presence. Buildings, tools, graves, anything that cannot be dismissed as coincidence. Hana pulled on her environmental suit and checked her scanner. The air outside was breathable but thin. The temperature was cold. She grabbed her equipment pack and followed the others down the ramp. The dig site looked ordinary. Brown dirt, scattered rocks, a few pieces of scientific equipment left behind by the original excavation team. Velthar walked to the exact spot where the marble had been found and knelt down, brushing the ground with his clawed hand. It was buried at a depth of 3 meters, he said, covered by sediment from ancient volcanic activity. No signs of any structure or building nearby. Then we expand the search, Hana said. She pulled out a larger scanner and began adjusting its settings. If there was a colony here, there must be other artifacts. Foundations, roads, water systems. Something. They worked for 2 days, scanning and digging in an expanding circle around the original site. They found rocks. They found dirt. They found absolutely nothing human. On the 3rd day, Ambassador Kreeth's frustration finally boiled over. This is pointless, he squawked, his feathers puffed up in anger. We have found nothing. The marble was probably dropped by a recent visitor or transported here by accident. The dating is accurate, Velthar said tiredly. The marble is 40,000 years old. That's not in question. Then perhaps it came from somewhere else, Kreeth suggested. Perhaps ancient traders brought it here. Perhaps, wait, Hannah said, staring at her scanner. I'm getting something. Everyone rushed over. Hannah's scanner showed a faint outline beneath the ground about 5 meters down. It was straight, too straight to be natural. What is it? Commander Thex asked. I don't know yet, Hannah said, already grabbing a shovel. But let's find out. They dug for 6 hours using tools and careful excavation techniques. The sun was setting when they finally uncovered it. A wall. Not rock, not natural formation, but a constructed wall made of formed concrete. Velthar ran his scanner over it. His hands shook slightly as he read the results. This is human construction. The concrete composition matches earth-building methods from 35 to 45,000 years ago. It's exactly the right age. They found more over the next 3 days. Streets buried under meters of volcanic ash. The foundations of buildings. A water pipe made of ceramic. And then, on the 6th day, they found the graves. 23 of them carefully arranged in rows. The bodies had long since turned to dust, but the grave markers remained. Simple stones with names carved in Hangul and English. Hannah knelt beside one, brushing away dirt with trembling hands. The name read, Yoonji Kim, beloved mother, 2981 to 3046. The dates are in an old Earth calendar system, Doyun's voice said through Hannah's communicator. He was monitoring everything from the ship in orbit. If I'm calculating correctly, this woman died 40,032 years ago. They found more graves the next day. Then more streets. Then the remains of what looked like a school. In one building's foundation, they discovered a time capsule, a sealed metal box that had somehow survived 40 millennia underground. The entire team gathered as Velthar carefully opened the capsule. Inside was a data storage device, primitive by modern standards but still intact. They connected it to their systems and after hours of work, managed to extract the data. A hologram flickered to life. It showed a woman with kind eyes and tired smile. She wore clothes that looked strange but recognizably human. Behind her, buildings were visible and people walking past. My name is Jiwon Park, the woman said in Korean, with an English subtitle appearing below. I am recording this message in the year 3082 of the Earth Standard Calendar. If you are watching this, it means someone found our colony. I hope that someone is human. I hope that means Earth survived. Jiwon looked down, gathering her thoughts, then continued. Our colony is dying. We lost contact with Earth 16 years ago. We've heard nothing from any other human world in 8 years. We don't know if it's just us or if something has happened to all of humanity. The volcanoes are getting worse. The ground shakes every day now. We've decided to evacuate, to try to reach another colony world. But we don't have many ships and the journey is dangerous. She smiled sadly. We're burying this capsule before we leave. Inside you'll find our records, our history, the names of everyone who lived here. 2,347 people called this place home. We built schools and parks. We had children and celebrated birthdays. We lived good lives here. Jiwon's eyes filled with tears. If we don't make it, please remember us. Remember that we were here. Remember that we tried. Remember that we were human. The hologram faded. The room was completely silent. Even Ambassador Kreeth, who had been so skeptical, looked moved. Hannah wiped her eyes. We need to find out what happened to them. They spent the next week excavating the colony. They found records, personal items, toys like the marble, and more graves. The picture that emerged was heartbreaking. The colony had thrived for almost 300 years, growing to over 2,000 people. Then the volcanic activity increased. The ground became unstable. Crops failed, and finally they evacuated. Did they make it? Commander Thex asked, looking at the abandoned streets. I don't know, Hannah said, but I'm going to find out. She contacted Earth, requesting a comprehensive search of genetic records. What came back 3 days later shocked everyone. A scientist named Mion appeared on the communication screen, excited and breathless. Hannah, you need to hear this. I've been studying isolated human populations across the galaxy. You know, the remote colonies that lost contact with Earth. Yes, Hannah said. I found 13 populations that have been genetically isolated for between 30 and 45,000 years. 13, Hannah. They're not descended from recent colonists. They're descended from the Lost Age colonies. Mion pulled up a star map showing the locations. And here's the thing. One of these populations is only 15 light-years from Kepler 442b, a world called Haven. 300,000 people living there, completely unaware of Earth or the galactic community. Could they be descendants of Jiwan's colony? Velthar asked. I'm running genetic comparisons now, Mion said. But based on their location and their isolation period, it's very possible. The Galactic Council, watching all of this unfold through reports from the investigation committee, called an emergency session. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans had been spacefaring 40,000 years ago. They had built colonies across dozens of worlds. And those colonies, or their descendants, were still out there. Elder Queeness addressed the council while Hana and her team watched through a live feed. We have verified the evidence, the Elder said. Humanity achieved advanced spaceflight capability at least 40,000 years ago, possibly longer. This makes them one of the oldest spacefaring species in recorded galactic history. The chamber erupted in argument. Some species celebrated the discovery. Others protested, refusing to accept it. The Saurian representative stood up, his voice angry. This proves nothing about their worthiness, he declared. If anything, it proves they are unstable. They rose and fell. They forgot their own history. They destroyed themselves. What kind of species does that? A resilient one, Velthar said quietly, standing up. The chamber fell silent. It was rare for the curator to speak at council meetings. I have spent 2 weeks on Kepler 442b, walking the streets of a dead colony. I have read the names on graves of people who died 40,000 years ago. I have seen children's toys and school books and love letters written in languages that almost vanished from existence. He paused, looking around the chamber. Yes, humanity fell. Yes, they lost their history. But they survived. They rebuilt. They rose again. And the descendants of those ancient colonists are still alive, still human, still carrying forward the legacy of people like Jiwan Park who refused to give up even when everything seemed lost. Velthar's scales shifted to a deep, respectful blue. I came to Kepler 442b believing I would prove a human wrong. Instead, I learned that resilience is not weakness. Humanity's greatest strength is not that they never fall. It's that they always get back up. The vote was called. The galaxy would officially recognize humanity's ancient legacy. It was close, but it passed. Hana stood on the surface of Kepler 442b one last time before they left. She held a small stone from one of the graves with permission from the council to take it. On it was carved Minho Lee, Dreamer of Stars. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Within days, every station, every colony, every world knew about the discovery on Kepler 442b. Humanity was ancient. Humans had been exploring space for 40,000 years or more. The newcomers were actually among the oldest spacefaring species in the galaxy. Reactions were immediate and intense. On the Saurian homeworld, protests filled the capital city. Thousands of citizens marched through the streets, their scales flashing angry reds and oranges. They carried signs written in their native language. History cannot be rewritten, and lies do not make truth. The collective of enlightened worlds had built their entire identity on being the galaxy's eldest civilization. Now that foundation was cracking. High Chancellor Vormix gave a public address, his voice strained. We do not accept these findings. The evidence has been manipulated. Humans are desperate for legitimacy, and they have fabricated this story to claim a prestige they have not earned. But the evidence was real, and everyone knew it. Independent scientists from a dozen species had verified the data. The graves were real. The buildings were real. The genetic studies of isolated populations were real. Denial could not change facts. The avian sovereignty took a different approach. Ambassador Kreeth, who had witnessed everything firsthand, held a press conference. His feathers were smoothed down and his voice was measured and careful. What we found on Kepler 442b is genuine, he said. But we must ask ourselves what this discovery means. Humanity achieved spaceflight 40,000 years ago, yes, but they also lost it. They destroyed their own civilization, possibly multiple times. They forgot their history. They had to start over from nothing. He paused, letting his words sink in. Is this the kind of species we want as equals in the galactic community? A species that repeatedly builds great things only to tear them down. Today they are peaceful, but what happens in another 1,000 years? Will they fall again? Will they drag us down with them? His words found a receptive audience. Fear spread quickly. If humans could forget their own past, what else might they be capable of? If they had destroyed themselves before, might they do it again? On Earth, the revelations caused a different kind of crisis. Hannah watched news broadcasts from her apartment on Nexus Prime, feeling sick as she saw what her discovery had unleashed. Earth's government was in chaos. Different factions argued about what the Lost Age meant for humanity's future. Some saw it as proof of human resilience and strength. Others saw it as evidence of fundamental human flaws. A popular philosopher named Sayin became the face of the optimistic view. His broadcast was watched by billions of humans across hundreds of worlds. Yes, we fell, Sayin said, standing in a studio on Earth with images of ancient human ruins behind him. Yes, we lost everything and had to rebuild. Some people see that as weakness. I see it as our greatest strength. He walked forward, passion in his voice. Every other species in this galaxy has maintained continuous civilization. They've never faced complete collapse. They don't know what it means to lose everything and still survive. We do. We've done it multiple times. And every single time we came back. We rebuilt. We reached for the stars again. Sang-hyun pointed at the camera. We are the species that refuses to stay down. We are the species that looks at total destruction and says, not today. That's not a flaw. That's who we are. His broadcast went viral, shared across human space and beyond. But it wasn't enough to stop the backlash. 3 weeks after the council vote, violence erupted. A radical faction of the avian sovereignty, calling themselves the Pure Sky Movement, attacked the human embassy on their homeworld. They claimed humanity was a threat to galactic stability, that humans were a species of cyclic barbarians who could not be trusted. The attack killed 16 people, including 12 humans. Hannah knew one of them, a young diplomat named Hyejin who had helped her access the Earth archives. She sat in her apartment, staring at Hyejin's picture on the news, and felt a crushing weight of guilt. Her discovery had led to this. Her need to prove humanity's worth had gotten people killed. There was a knock on her door. She opened it to find Velthar standing there, looking exhausted. His scales were pale gray, a sign of distress. "May I come in?" he asked. Hannah nodded, stepping aside. Velthar entered and sat carefully on her human-sized couch, his large frame making the furniture creak. "I came to tell you something," he said. "The museum has asked me to remove the marble from display. They say it has become too controversial, that it's attracting protesters and causing problems, and—" "Are you going to do it?" Hannah asked. "No," Velthar said firmly. "That marble is the truth. I will not hide the truth because people find it inconvenient or frightening." Hannah sat down across from him. "People died, Velthar, because of what we found. Because I couldn't leave well enough alone." "People died because of hate and fear," Velthar corrected, "not because of truth. The Pure Sky Movement would have found another excuse eventually. Fanatics always do." He leaned forward. "Hannah, I need to show you something. Something I've been working on." He pulled out a data pad and handed it to her. On the screen were reports, lots of them, from all across the galaxy. Archaeological surveys of worlds that had never been properly explored. Genetic studies of isolated populations. Analysis of artifacts in museums that had been mislabeled or misunderstood. "What is this?" Hannah asked. "Evidence," Velthar said. "While the galaxy has been arguing, I've been investigating. Do you know how many worlds show signs of ancient human presence? 73. 73 worlds, Hannah, where humans lived and built and died tens of thousands of years ago." He pulled up a star map showing all the locations. They formed a rough sphere spreading out from Earth, marking the extent of that ancient civilization. "And the isolated populations," Velthar continued. "Mion has identified 21 of them now. 21 groups of humans living on remote worlds completely unaware that they're part of a larger human family. Some of them have been isolated for so long that they've developed their own languages, their own cultures. They think they're alone in the universe." Hannah looked at the map, feeling overwhelmed. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because while everyone else is arguing about what this means politically, I've been thinking about what it means historically," Velthar said. "Hannah, your people didn't just rise and fall once. You rose and fell and rose again over and over, across hundreds of thousands of years. Do you understand how remarkable that is?" "It means we keep making the same mistakes," Hannah said bitterly. "It means you keep surviving," Velthar corrected. My people, the Saurians, we've maintained continuous civilization for 30,000 years. Do you know why? Because we're cautious. We advance slowly. We never take big risks. We've survived by being careful. He pointed at the map. Your people survived by being resilient. You took enormous risks. You spread across the galaxy in primitive ships. You colonized hostile worlds. You made mistakes, yes, terrible mistakes that cost everything. But you survived. The descendants of those colonists are still alive after 40,000 years. Velthar stood up, his scales brightening to a determined green. I'm forming a new research institute. The Lost Age Foundation. Our mission will be to find every lost human colony, to recover every piece of forgotten human history, and to reconnect those isolated populations with their heritage. I want you to lead it. Hana stared at him. Me? After everything that's happened? Especially after everything that's happened, Velthar said. The galaxy needs to understand what humanity really is. Not newcomers, not cyclic barbarians, but the most persistent species in known space. And those isolated populations need to know they're not alone. Before Hana could respond, her communication device chimed. It was Mian, and she looked excited. Hana! We made contact with Haven, the isolated colony near Kepler 442b. They've been living there for 40,000 years. They speak a language derived from ancient Korean. And Hana, they've been waiting. They have legends about the star home, about ancestors who came from the sky. They've been watching the stars, hoping someone would find them. Mian's eyes shone with tears. They want to meet us. They want to come home. Hana felt something shift inside her chest. The guilt was still there and the grief for those who had died. But underneath it was something else, hope. Tell them we're coming, Hana said. She looked at Velthar. I'll lead your institute, but I have one condition. Name it. We don't just study these people, Hana said. We help them. We give them the choice to reconnect with humanity or stay isolated. We respect who they've become over all these thousands of years. Velthar's scales flashed blue with approval. Agreed. Outside Hana's window, Nexus Prime glittered with lights from 1,000 different species. The galaxy was still arguing about humanity's place among the stars. Politicians were still making speeches. Protesters were still carrying signs. But somewhere out there, on a world called Haven, 300,000 people were looking up at the sky, finally knowing that someone remembered them. The backlash would continue. The fear and anger would take time to fade. But the work of finding the lost and forgotten had just begun, and Hana intended to see it through. She owed that much to Jiwon, to Minho, to Hyejin, and to all the humans who had lived and died hoping that someone would remember them. 6 months after the marble was first displayed in the Grand Galactic Museum, Hana stood on the bridge of the research vessel Remembrance, watching Haven grow larger in the view screen. The planet looked peaceful, with blue oceans and green continents wrapped in white clouds. 300,000 people lived down there, descendants of colonists who had left Kepler 442b 40,000 years ago. Behind her, Velthar checked his instruments. Beside him, Doyun reviewed the translation protocols one more time. Mian stood at the biology station, monitoring everything with excitement in her eyes. They were making first contact with a human population that had been isolated since before most galactic civilizations had existed. They know we're coming, Mian said, reading the communication logs. They've been broadcasting greetings for the past 3 days. Hana, they're playing music for us. Hana listened as the ship's speakers picked up the transmission. It was distinctly human music, but strange, evolved over 40 millennia into something new. The instruments were unfamiliar, and the language of the song was like Korean but different, changed by thousands of years of isolation. Translation? Hana asked. Doyun smiled. It's a welcome song. The words roughly translate to, Children of the Star Home return, bringing light from distant fires, we remember you remembered us. Hana felt tears prick her eyes. The Galactic Council's recognition had been important, but this was what truly mattered, finding the lost and bringing them home. The landing site was in a city called Nuri, which meant world in their language. As the Remembrance descended, Hana could see thousands of people gathered in a massive plaza watching the sky. They wore clothes that looked like a blend of ancient Korean styles and something entirely new. Buildings surrounded the plaza, made of local materials but showing distinctly human architectural sensibilities. The ship touched down gently. Hana took a deep breath. checked her translation device one more time, and walked to the airlock. Velthar followed, along with Doyen and Miyun. They had agreed that only humans would make the first contact, but Velthar wanted to witness this moment. The airlock opened. Hana stepped out into Haven's sunlight, and the crowd erupted in sound. It wasn't quite cheering, not quite singing, but something in between. The noise of 300,000 people welcoming home family they had never met, but always believed existed. An elderly woman walked forward from the crowd. She moved slowly, supported by younger people on either side, but her eyes were bright and alert. She wore robes of deep blue decorated with silver stars. As she approached, the entire crowd fell silent. "I am called Somin," the woman said in her language. The translation device in Hana's ear rendered it perfectly. "I am the keeper of our stories, the guardian of our memory. For 200 generations we have waited for this moment." Hana bowed deeply, the traditional Korean bow that her grandmother had taught her. "I am Hana. I come from Earth, the star home your ancestors left so long ago. We did not forget you. We just lost our way for a while." Somin smiled, and tears ran down her weathered face. "Our legends told us that one day the sky would open, and our family would return. The children doubted. The young thought it was just a story. But I knew. I always knew." She reached out with a trembling hand, and Hana took it. Somin's skin was warm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Tell me," Somin said. "Tell me about the star home. Tell me if our ancestors' sacrifice was worth it." Over the next hours, as the sun moved across Haven's sky, Hana told her. She told Somin about Earth, about the billions of humans living on hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. She told her about the rediscovery of Kepler 442b, about Jiwon's message, about the marble that had started everything. She told her about the great data collapse, about how humanity had forgotten its own past. She told her about the Galactic Council, about the other species that filled the stars. She told her everything. Somin listened, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, always holding Hana's hand. "So we are not alone," Somin finally said. "Not just we on Haven, but all of humanity. We have not been alone, we just did not know it." "You were never alone," Hana said. "And now you know it." That night, Haven celebrated. The entire planet seemed to be throwing a party. Hana walked through Nuri with Somin, seeing a city that was thoroughly human but also completely unique. They had developed their own technology, different from galactic standard but sophisticated in its own way. They had art, music, literature, all grown from Korean roots but evolved into something new. Somin took her to a building at the center of the city, a structure that looked ancient even by Haven's standards. Inside was a museum, but not like any museum Hana had ever seen. It was a shrine, a temple, a library all in one. "This is where we keep our history," Somin explained. "Everything we could save from the evacuation, everything we brought from Kepler 442b. The walls were covered with carefully preserved documents, faded but still readable. There were pictures of the original colonists, their names listed in Hangul and English. There were children's drawings, tools, pieces of clothing, anything that could be saved when they fled the dying colony. And in the center of the main hall, in a place of honor, was a small collection of marbles. Tiger's eye marbles, identical to the one in the Grand Galactic Museum. "Jiwon Park," Somin said, pointing to a picture on the wall. It showed the same woman from the time capsule recording, but younger, smiling, holding a small child. She was the captain of the colony ship. "She got us here. She saved us." Hana looked at the picture, feeling a connection across 40,000 years. "Did she survive the journey?" "Yes," Somin said. "She lived another 30 years after we arrived. She saw her grandchildren born on this world. Her last words were, 'Tell our children to keep watching the stars.' Tell them we will be remembered." Hana wiped her eyes. She was right. Over the next weeks, the integration process began. Haven's people had to decide what they wanted: to remain isolated with their unique culture intact, to slowly integrate with the greater human civilization, or something in between. It was their choice, and Hana made sure everyone understood that. They chose integration, but on their terms. They would share their technology and culture with other humans. They would send ambassadors to Earth and other human worlds. But Haven would remain their home. Their culture would be preserved, and they would do things at their own pace. Similar stories played out on the other 20 isolated colonies that Mion and her team had found. Each one was unique. Each had developed their own culture and traditions over tens of thousands of years. But all of them chose to reconnect with humanity in some way. On Earth, Sangyun's optimistic view of humanity's cyclical history gained support. People began to see the falls not as failures but as proof of resilience. Humanity's ability to survive anything, to rebuild from nothing, became a source of pride rather than shame. The backlash from other species didn't disappear, but it faded. Fear gave way to grudging respect. The Pure Sky movement was condemned by the avian sovereignty's government, their leaders arrested. Slowly, the galaxy adjusted to its new understanding of humanity's place among the stars. The Grand Galactic Museum reopened its exhibit on the marble, but the display was completely changed. Now it included Jiwan's message, pictures of Kepler 442b's ruins, information about the isolated colonies, and a direct communication link to Haven where visitors could talk with the descendants of those ancient colonists. Velthar's Lost Age Foundation grew rapidly. Funded by Earth and supported by several sympathetic alien species, they established offices on 20 worlds, employed hundreds of researchers, and began the long work of recovering humanity's forgotten history. 1 year after that day in the museum when Hana first saw the marble, she stood in front of the Galactic Council to deliver her final report. The chamber was packed. Every species had sent representatives. Even the Saurians, who had been so resistant at first, listened with respectful attention. "We have confirmed 73 worlds with evidence of ancient human presence," Hana said, her voice steady and clear. "We have located 21 isolated human populations with a combined population of approximately 4 million people. We have recovered thousands of artifacts and hundreds of thousands of documents from the Lost Age." She paused, looking around the chamber, but numbers don't tell the real story. The real story is about people. People like Jiwan who led her colony to safety. People like Minho who carved their name on a marble. People like Soman who kept the faith across 200 generations. People who lived and died and hoped that someone would remember them. Hana pulled out a small object and held it up for the cameras. It was a tiger's eye marble. The one from the museum returned to her custody as the head of the Lost Age Foundation. This marble is 40,000 years old. It survived the fall of a civilization, volcanic destruction, and 40 millennia buried in the ground. It survived because it was made well, and because someone cared enough to make it in the first place. She looked directly at the camera, knowing billions of beings across the galaxy were watching. That's humanity. We make things that last. We care about things that matter. We fall down and we get back up. We forget and we remember. We get lost and we find our way home.